Hello, everyone. It is Kenyon here. It is Basketball Rewind, and the draft is now finished. Of course, as I always say, we conveyed the pick. It's been an interesting 2 days. I will first start off by talking about, asking the two guys that are with me today, as per usual, how was your draft experience? And then I'll talk about my draft experience. Beyond and I watched it together. Coach, when you travel, things happen, I'll start with you, Coach. How was your experience watching the draft? Is there anything that you want to share just about the overall experience, maybe the ambiance or whatever?
Well, I, I think Beyond had just said that just before we went live. This is the most active Raptors draft day I've recall in my life of watching this team. I've had us like we've had two picks in a year before. The actual last year, I think we had the four picks was in 2005. I think we had Joey Graham, Charlie Villanueva, Euro Slokar and Roko Ukic. That was the last time they were probably this active in the draft. So certainly it's with the 2 day experience. When one day ends, if you're kind of disappointed or if you're really happy, you get another day of, maybe feeling a little worse for wear, or you're feeling a little bit better because of the next pick. And I think with our 31st pick, I think there's so much value around that this year. And I'm glad they held on to it, quite frankly, because
Right.
I know I've said this. It's a first round talent for second round money.
Were
But
you were you just watching it with family though, or that sort of thing?
mainly I've been watching it by myself and my wife as I'm visiting Nova Scotia at the moment.
Oh,
But
right.
yeah, and just following Twitter as well. So I've enjoyed the experience of watching the draft, certainly.
Well, well, before I get to you, Beyond, I'll just say this. This is one of the first times when I largely just put my phone down. It was quite nice just to enjoy the picks coming in naturally, not seeing, I will give JD a shout out. He ruined it for me a little bit because right before he said the dream's over. So the guy that I wanted, so that kind of like it didn't ruin the 19th overall pick. I was still, relatively content with it. But at the same time, it was like, oh, like, like just finding it, just having it ruined it for you. But overall, it was a nice viewing experience, not like getting the Woj tweets, not being in the space and listening to people like ruin it for you. It kind of happened a little bit today, and I was like, no, like I want it to, I like to actually have it happen naturally. But that is, say la vie. Beyond your thoughts, I mean, we watched it together, but what was your thoughts on just, viewing it?
Well, I tend to watch the draft like that. I don't look at my phone really when the draft's going on. So to me, this was a kind of a normal experience. But what I found interesting is that I don't think I had so many wide-ranging emotions for a team I follow as I had for the last 24 hours for a draft. In this case, I'm picking football or basketball in this case. In 24 hours, like I had with this team the last 24 hours, where it's like, oh, and then hey, and then hey, and then scratch head, be like, oh, and like surprise. Like there's been so many different emotions in within 24 hours that I can recall where it's like I just shake in my head, like, okay, it's like bittersweet. Initially, it was like, oh, De Silva might be there, and then no, De Silva's not there. And then we get Walter, and then it's like, okay, and then I started growing on.
Yeah.
It. The night went on. It's like, okay, I like this pick a lot. Then next day comes, and then we get the Mogbo, and I'm like, huh? And then before that, the trade happens, and we're like, hey, we're excited again. It's like then you get Mogbo, you're scratching your head a little bit. We'll get to that in a second, and then the only
Yeah.
next thing you know, we're back in there with that 45th pick, I think it is, and it's 44 or 45th. I mean, they had so much moves, I lost track. 45th pick, wherever it is, they pick up the point guard. You're like, okay, interesting. You're like, cool. And then the last piece of it, which I literally heard from you guys about 5 minutes ago, was like, I was at another event, like, what? I should say the last two pieces of information. A
Right.
two-way guy, and then of course, the big man cometh finally.
Right. Right.
That's what we
Right.
should name this episode.
Right. Right. That's a good point.
So yeah, it was a gamut of emotions for the last 24 hours in Raptorland.
So just to wrap up all of the things all in one go, we got Jacoby Walter at the 19th overall pick. We also got Mogbo for number 31, of course, and then finally we ended up getting two other picks. One was from think an offshoot from the Sacramento deal. We did make a Sacramento deal. We got a number 45, as well as we got the Portland pick. Jalen McDaniels is out. He found out at a camp, and I think if I'm not mistaken, we had the we got the 57. I don't have the details of that. We presume for now, as of the filming of this, cash considerations, and I believe we got Ulrich. Ulrich is someone we never ended up doing a video on just because of time, but we did talk about him a little bit. So you know what? Let's actually start with him because we have a little bit of information on some of the other guys, less so on Mogbo, but we do have information on him. But let's start with Ulrich because I know that Coach really wanted to talk about Ulrich in the first place, and I think that's a good place to start.
I noticed Ulrich back in April. Some videos were released, and I was looking at his measurements. I saw this kid like 6'10", 240, and like, oh, that's interesting for an 18-year-old. You don't see many 18-year-olds in the world who play basketball at 6'10", 240. And just watching some of his highlights, I knew he was relatively raw to basketball. I know they said on air he's been playing since 11 years old, but you could just tell he needs time. But the shot form, the athleticism, the fluidity kind of which he plays for his age and for where he's at in his developmental journey, I'll call it. I'm like, this guy's an NBA player. He's got talent and upside. And just looking at his shot form, the mechanics look good, good release, good athlete. He's got some rim protecting abilities. And I was really excited when I saw him back in April. I'm like, this guy, yeah, I know he might go to college, but probably an NBA player, even in the draft. And it made it easier for him to come up in this draft than maybe next year's draft in 2025. So I think getting Ulrich at 57, low risk, high reward. It's different if you picked him at 19, maybe even different at 31, but Ulrich at 57, take a chance on the kid. Give him 2 years in the G League. See what you got after that because he's going to need time. But I think we're in rebuild mode now. This is the time to do something like that.
I think he also has probably the highest upside of all of the guys that we got in terms of like if everything clicks, he probably has the highest upside. I definitely watched him at the combine a bit, and followed him a little bit before. Some of the film is hard to see just because obviously it's there's not a ton of overseas footage, but there was enough for me to kind of get a look at it. He's definitely raw, but he flashes a lot of potential. Even at the combine, I can't remember if he was against Bronny James's team or on Bronny James's team, but he was in that run. And it was one of those things where he would have one play where he's just like, you're like, oh my goodness, this guy has it. And then the next play, you're like, who is he passing to? No one was over there. So there's definitely some work from a feel standpoint for all of those of you who are looking for the Masai pick. He is definitely the Masai pick, and we definitely we talked about getting him. I thought they were gonna months ago get him at like 31 type of a thing or a second round. And then lo and behold, we've kind of followed him along as he kind of moved back. And I said like yesterday, many were like, he's a 31 overall pick. And I was like, I think you can get him later. Maybe you get him, he's undrafted. So I'm glad that they were able to get him. And I'm glad that they were able to address the big. and that's probably a good segue to Beyond, as we transition into Mogbo.
Yeah, Mogbo. I was saying Mogbo is Mogbo. My apologies to the family. Ulrich, I'll just start with him. I am happy that we got the big finally. Our man Mouth the North, I'm sure, is quite happy now, can sleep easy tonight. We do have the big. I literally came from somewhere talking to a friend of mine. We were talking about the draft, and he was saying the same thing. Where the hell's the big? Not knowing at this point they had just gotten the big. So I'm happy to see that they got the big. I'm going to kind of summarize all the guys, and then eventually we could break them out in this case when the time comes. But I think overall, what I see today, I mentioned you guys were on space earlier, and I think what they're looking for is guys with motor, guys that have dog in them. Also, if you look at just there's a physicality to all these players. Not a one of them in this case, like a guy in this case here, he got to lift a weight, or he needs a little bit of a meal. All these guys look very physically imposing, which compared to what sometimes what we see in the past with some Raptor picks, where it's like maybe the person's a little soft, or the person has to go and get in the room. All these guys look like that, so I think that's great. I'd be curious, Coach. You might want to get your thoughts in here about what you think about the rest of the picks, man.
What I think about the rest of the picks, I'm fine with in terms of the theme of what it looks like they did with this draft. Um, like you said, I think mentality of a player was really targeted by this front office. And questions of motor, I don't know questions of motor. When you got the National Defensive Player of the Year, Jamal Shead, Mogbo is high motor, great athlete. And then you have someone like Ulrich, that's your talent. That's the guy who you're just like, okay, in 2 years, 3 years, he might be the guy that might be that home run swing for us. And of
You
course,
mentioned the
Jacob
gym. Yeah, Jacoby.
and Jacoby Walter. Yeah. No, Jacoby Walter was and on some mocks he was a top 3 or 5 pick that first month. And then, he kind of a little bit of inconsistency with Baylor, but he was the best player available at that time. And he's got a mentality like he seems like he wants to be really good and he's going to work hard. And I think we just need more of that.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Absolutely. So as we kind of continue to transition through this, we're actually going to just take a short break right now before we go into some of the details of the trade. So right now we're just going to, put a little transition piece in there. I don't know, go grab a coffee or whatever, people, if you need to, and we'll be right back. And we're back. So I guess here's a good question. Where do you want to go to Jacoby Walter, or do you want to talk about Jonathan Mogbo, or do you want to talk about Sheed? Because we haven't really talked about Sheed.
Well,
I think you know a bit more about Sheed than I do.
I would say this. Let's go back in time. I think we should give due to the first pick, the first round pick.
Yes, I was trying. Yeah. I wasn't sure if you want to go this way or that way.
No. I mean, I think because of where we are today and so much activity, he's kind of
Yes,
got lost in the shuffle a little bit. And
he has. He really has.
yeah, he should get his due.
He
Um,
does.
yeah, that's when it's all said and done. All the other picks are great. This is the pick that you're hoping this
This
kid
is
to have the biggest impact.
especially for the first year.
Yeah.
So here's the thing about Jacoby Walter is that I kept seeing like the Ringer and a couple other places, like I think CBS, like about a week ago, 2 weeks, for a couple weeks he was mocked to the Raptors. I kept seeing that. I'm like, okay. And then we talked to Tyler. I don't think you were part of that conversation, unfortunately,
No.
but we did it. It's funny. I was actually asking about Keyshawn George, and he
Yeah.
brought up, I listened back to it, and he actually brought up Walters
Yeah.
and talked about both of them and how the Baylor guards are and that sort of thing. It ended up being, a good intro to kind of what you're kind of getting. So the thing
Mm-hmm.
is to talk about him, it's really high school is the key.
Right.
You're looking at high school and you're projecting out, can you get what you saw then now? And that is really kind of what you're looking at. At Baylor, I'm not going to even talk about his shooting splits because it's basically the Fred VanVleet stat line, as I said. You're looking beyond that. So it's like, okay, how did he get his shots? High
Well, I think
degree of difficulty.
yeah, but I just want to tie it back to what Tyler had said in that, to paraphrase what he said. And I think he was talking about the system that Baylor runs and
Right.
putting maybe too much on his shoulders. And if you look at how his splits were, he was like hot as a firecracker in the case the first part of the year. And as
Right.
the
Yes, he
season went,
was.
it kept dropping and dropping. And you just
He
wondered,
came out like I think one of the first games it was like what 28 points he
26 or
dropped or
28
26
points,
points.
scorching,
Yeah.
yeah. And I think it's one of
With
those things that
rebounds and stuff like that too.
everything, yeah. I think this wore the kid down a little bit. And I said to you last night, I remember us having these discussions. Case for my man, in this case, who I had with my man last year, George,
Deontay George, yeah.
which were not too far off the same thing. And I say
Yeah.
you wonder a little bit. His was a lot more easier to see because it was like pre-injury, post-injury. But you start wondering a little bit is like how much are you putting on the player and the guards for in
To
this
lift the rest of your
the rest of
system.
the set, right? Because like
Yeah.
The other thing too is when you watch some of a lot of his highlights, man, there's a lot of traffic in the lane.
There is.
Right, Misi's up in there, and the rest of the dudes are in there. There's not a lot of traffic. So if you look at that, to your point, going back to the numbers now, like I can see why maybe his finishing around the hoop is not going to be great, or his mid range might not be great because there's nowhere to go.
Yeah, he is
Like,
getting to spots, which is something that makes you feel better because, like, it's like, can a guy get to the spot in the first
exactly.
place, right? Or is he getting stymied? I think he's an above average athlete. I don't think he's a way plus athlete, but he's an above average athlete at the NBA level. But he has the length and he has enough of a burst to maybe get there. And especially on the defensive end, the burstiness for
Right.
sure.
Exactly.
So yeah.
I think the other thing too is like, and I was watching, some of his tape. And what I do like is, unlike a lot of times when you watch a lot of these highlight reels for a lot of these guys, essentially it's the same play all the time. It's like kick out for
Yes.
three, kick out for three, kick out for three. He had plenty of those too. But then
Yep.
as you continue to watch some of the footage, like, oh, you start seeing him adapt a little bit where he's like, oh, he's got a little floater. And then you move a little further down the footage, like, oh, he's got a little pull up in there from 15. Oh, I didn't see that coming. And it's like now you start to see he does a great job of closeouts. There's growth there and opportunity where I can see, like, if he's with better teammates, he will have more room to operate to try some of those shots when that happens. When other players are getting more attention, I can see him making a lot of hay fast. And I think one of the things that's great with him is similar to Grady last year. There's not a concern about skill level.
No.
It's more refining the skill. It's not like, Lord, we're starting here on molded clay and like, well, let's see what we can do with it. No.
Yeah.
It's a higher watermark that we got to deal with.
Yeah, I think he gets a little bit of flack just reading the comments online where people are saying he's a little bit too raw in this. I think he's less raw than you think, but he does need to. There's things like his handle. I do think that his handle needs some work to really, really get him into spaces at an NBA level. That's going to help him a lot. I know he's working with Dame's guy, which is really interesting. He's working with the same trainer as Dame, and Dame actually gave him a lot of advice. And, as a guy who's trying to learn that type of skill set, that's probably not the worst guy to kind of have in your ear.
Yeah, I heard in this case they're working out on practicing more. I can't remember who I heard this from last night. It might be on NBA TV. So pardon me if I don't have the right thing. I think no, it was the CBS guys. I think I sent you with Avery Johnson, those guys, and talk about how his workouts are now. I think it's they're talking about his workouts and talking about how he was starting to work on mid ranges, about the throw ahead pass in this case here to kind of get into a spot, to split a double and pull up. Like these type of things are NBA type shots. So it makes sense if a guy like Lillard's camp is working with him for those type of plays and those type of shots. I think I would say this with the dribbling, the handle. I'll put it this way for Raptor fans: his handle's in a lot better spot coming out as a rookie than DeMar DeRozan's ever was.
True.
People forget where DeMar was as a dribbler now. We did DeMar DeRozan splitting double teams and pulling up from 17 feet. When DeMar DeRozan came out, it was like two bounces into the hoop straight line.
People forget how raw DeMar was. Right. And just so people know, he's about 6'4" and a quarter without shoes on, with a 6'10" wingspan. So, with shoes on, you add, say he ends up being... It's either that or was it 6'5" and a
6'5.5" is what I saw measured out.
6'5.5". So it's somewhere in between there, and then you put on shoes, and he's around, I think, around 6'6". So he's got some good size, and he's also young enough that he will fill out. He might be at the tail end of possibly growing an inch or two. I wouldn't bank on him growing two, more on one, but 6'10" wingspan. You're looking at a guy that's around the same measurements as Norman Powell.
He's about 200. He's almost 200 pounds right now. Probably by the time tip-off starts, he might be at 210.
Yeah.
By the time it starts. So he's probably already putting on weight already. So I think people might be surprised. I'm curious to see what he looks like when the summer league starts. I'll admit, 100%. I haven't been this excited for a summer league, Raptor summer league, in who knows how long.
Yeah, because last year it was Grady and who he played for.
Crazy.
And that was it. It was like, I think the last time that Joe Wieskamp was in any real NBA pseudo NBA action, because he actually went to the Mavs, if I'm not mistaken, but he didn't make it past camp.
Please. Let's not forget. Yeah, exactly.
But that was the last time we saw Joe Wieskamp, right? Yeah. That was it. So, I mean, you're kind of going in and you're going to see a lot of these guys, as well as, funny enough, Ochai, which we'll get to in another episode at Summer League. definitely lots of stuff to talk about. But yeah, I think he projects to be right away as a potential 3 and D, but like a movement shooting three. I know a
Mm-hmm.
lot of people like to say every single dude that's a white dude is a movement. No, they're not.
No, no.
So sorry, Johnny Furphy, you are not a movement shooter. Okay. But
And so
this
brothers
guy,
just keep maybe like Ray Allen and Clay Thompson, like Steph Curry, they're
yes.
pretty good movement guys. Dale Ellis,
That too. I people need to be more imaginative
Dale
with your
Curry.
their stuff. Sorry, Reggie Miller. Really
Yeah.
was one of the first off-ball movers. Really, that before it was even really popular and really valued. Before it was a cool analytics thing.
Exactly. Yes,
But
yes.
he does it. I mean, that's how Baylor uses their guards. That's why I liked Keontae George a little bit, not as much as you, but I did like Keontae George because I said he really knows how to go around screens, come off screens, or work with screens to get his shot off. In I don't have the numbers exactly in front of me, but I know in isolation, that's where right now he's about in the high 70s, low 80th percentile. So that's where he's if you're looking long term, there's a little bit of shot creation that I think that they're hoping to tap into as an upside. And they even said so themselves. This is an upside swing.
Would he be the
Um,
second highest in the Raptors right now?
in terms of what?
If you had to translate that and say you put him as a Raptor and look at talking about his percentile, would he not be like second on the team right now?
No,
RJ
no,
would be ahead of him.
no. RJ quickly, right?
Quickly would be the other one. But yeah,
Right?
but
Like the thing is, we forget about quickly so often,
no, no.
right?
I had quickly. I had quickly. I might be a little behind because quickly had some moments where isolation gets a little funny. But fair enough. But it's still making my point.
Right, and then I would still put Grady a little bit ahead of it just because Grady has the tools. I
Mm,
mean, it's if you're 6'8", you're 6'8".
exactly.
He ain't 6'8".
But
So
I think my point I think still stands that he is still one of the highest guys in this case in isolation, which should improve over time.
yeah,
And he's starting there as potentially the third or the fourth guy right now.
yeah, I
Of
know that there's been debate on our side behind the scenes about like what is his role, and I think that he actually fits in nicely into the Gary Trent role, because there's certain things that Gary couldn't do, and I think yeah maybe I still need to see more of him maybe at the summer league level, but Gary struggled with his lateral quickness. And that was the biggest knock on Gary since he became a Raptor. Like since day one, I was like, a lot of people were like, oh, the 40-point game. I'm like, let's see more, right? And I think that this guy has the chance to jump up a little bit higher. I'm not saying he's going to be a world beater, but he could be a very interesting and fun pick to watch for sure. So yeah, that's probably the first thing. Moving on. I think the next thing is for Jacoby. Do you see him getting like? Is there anyone on the roster that he's fighting minutes for? Because I think some people are worried about Grady. I don't think so. I actually think it's Ochai, who's going to
I,
Summer League
well,
at
I
year
said,
three.
well, I said to you, I said in the space, I said Ochai might not be long for this team because
Yeah,
even with Gary here, it's even more likely that Ochai's not long
they're
for this
actually
team.
around the same, at least from I don't know the wingspan, but from a height and like the idea of him being a defender, that's Ochai. That's
Yeah,
what you're hoping that Ochai can be, but
right,
he's younger and
right.
I think his shot it has a higher chance of
It's not even close.
yeah,
Offensively, they're like in two different stratospheres.
yeah,
Like, he has some creation off the bounce. I don't think you can actually say it with Ochai at all. Never mind the fact he can actually hit 3-point shots wide open if you throw it to him.
yep,
We're still begging for Ochai to hit a jump shot anywhere.
yep, yeah,
Like, there's a game last year where Ochai had like about 4 wide open 3s, not one in the ocean, right? So
yes,
like,
yeah.
I doubt if this kid gets 4 wide open 3s that we're sitting there going, he's gonna be 0 for 4 when the night's done.
And like I said, coming into this draft, just so people are reminded of this, I said that no matter what happens, you're most likely going to get at least two guys potentially from this draft that will be better than anyone that you had on the bench for the most part in the past.
And
It
this
is a
dude,
little bit of an indictment on our bench,
it's a big
construction, but it's also it does go to show you for those of you who want the feel good story of from a bad draft or a perceived bad draft that you can get obviously get value from any draft, of course, but I think the more important thing is that it's an indictment of where we've been as a franchise in terms of that pipeline. I've been beating this drum until the skin on the drum is just almost, a hole now. Okay, and I've been saying we need to rebuild that pipeline. And I think that we did that and achieved that with that draft. Before we go to anyone else, is there anything more that you want to say about Jacoby?
I just think in this case here, man, when it's all said and done, he's a scorer,
Yeah.
a natural
Not he's not a shooter, he's a scorer.
scorer. Right. And I think he's a scorer that can shoot a little bit, but he's naturally a natural scorer. And why I
Yep.
say so is he has a potential for 3-level scoring, and he gets the free throw line, which
Yep.
is a natural scorer does.
That is actually, we forgot, because I had it up earlier, but he got to the line, free throw rate of 45.2% of the time that he touches the ball, he's going to the line. And
Right,
and he makes the shot.
Yeah. So when you have a guy drawing fouls like that and shooting at 80% clip from the free throw line, I'm not worried about his shot from 3 or anywhere else. That will work itself out over time.
Absolutely.
Nutrition, strength, he can be all right. He'll improve in those areas.
So here's a good juxtaposition, right? I'll give you two guys. So I'll first look at Scotty. And one of the complaints that I've always had about Scotty is he needs to get to the line. You need to be a foul merchant. I don't care if people don't like foul merchant. That's how you control the game. That's how you slow down the game. Scotty gets to the line. I don't know what his college numbers are, but last year he got to the line the highest amount. His free throw rate was 26.6%. So again, remember that 45%. I know it's at a lower level, but yeah. And I can look up the college numbers if you need me to. RJ got to the line a solid amount of time, and then we're gonna also look up Gary Trent just so you know people can kind of have that in their mind. RJ got to the line 33.9%, and we saw that bear out.
Mm-hmm.
Right? Mm-hmm. And then you look at Gary, and I don't think Gary has a tendency to not get to the line very often.
Mm-hmm.
So Gary got to the line at a 10%.
Well, this is the difference between him and Gary. So if we go back to comps of Gary, that's why I kind of cringe when people say Gary Trent. I'm like, I don't think so, because Gary Trent.
I think he's in the Gary Trent role, but not Gary Trent.
Right, exactly. Right. It's like if you tell me KCP, I'm more open to that.
I was just about to say that, like his comps for people who like the comp game. Yeah. He has been comped between. Funny enough, actually, a cross between Ochai and KCP.
Yeah, I think
by Sam Vecini, I think
he actually might be a better version of KCP at his peak, because I don't think KCP had that offensive game that I'm seeing here. It's pretty close, because KCP could stop or die and do that pull up when he's ready, and he can get the hoop. But I think he has a little more pop athletically than KCP, and might be a tad bit bigger. I think KCP is only 6'4". This kid's gonna be about 6'6". The other thing too is the athleticism. The reason why Trent don't get the line that much or doesn't get the line that much is that he usually tends to hit his ISO tends to be fadeaway jump shots. You're not
or the floater. He started that floater this year, right. And that because he can't get quite to the line, and he doesn't have the burst. There was times people forget. Okay, there were times Gary would be in transition, couldn't hit a dunk.
Yep, exactly.
He would get to the hoop and he couldn't. And I'm like, this dude is 6'5" essentially, and he can't dunk the ball.
Yeah, exactly. So that's where you see the athleticism playing out when they can't get the free throw. Even though they might see two guys similar height, there's a major difference between that, because he can get to spots you said earlier. So I'm it took me a while. I started, my loss of De Silva hurt me and pained me very much, but I found a new love, and I'm now open to love once again. And I'm looking forward to watching Mr. Walter, play for the Raptors.
And he dropped, of course, we talked about him being, at one point he was, consensus at least top 6 or 5 or whatever. He did drop. I think at that point he was when De Silva was off the board, and, behind the scenes we kind of had an inkling that it was, him and a couple of the Baylor guys as well.
Mm-hmm.
Once he was off the board, he was one of the best picks available, or BPA. And that's just what they went with. They could have went with Misi, or they could have went with Pacome. Would have been a little bit of a reach.
George is probably the most natural one.
George would have been, especially with this Canadian connection. I'm happy with this, actually. I'm very happy with this. So I think what has people a little bit jarred, and you brought this point up, so credit to you, is that I think people were like, at first are like, well, he doesn't solve an immediate problem that we have. He's
Mhm.
not a big man, so he's not solving an immediate problem. But I think he is switchable enough on defense, and he's good as a team defender. Point of attack, he needs to become a little less stiff, but but he's good enough as a team defender that I think he could switch at times on bigger ones and definitely all the way down to threes.
Mhm.
So
Yeah,
it's like a
especially
three
once
thing, but more two
yeah,
three.
exactly. Especially when he gets a little more size, he gets in there 20 pounds, then you can start playing some threes in certain circumstances.
Now, I want to say one final thing about him because I know we've given him a lot of shine. I I'll give him one last piece of shine, and then we'll move on to Mogbo. Here's the thing. He communicates on defense. Like he really communicates from the back line as well. Like you'll have spots where he's almost like in the quickly spot where he kind of like finds himself floating, and he will communicate.
Well, I think this is a trend that we're going to continue to see throughout this whole process for the last 24 hours. The type of mindset I keep mentioning is mindset. So there's another element that you're seeing there, right? When we get
Yep.
the Sheed, similar thing there. We get Mogbo. We're going to talk about in a second. Similar thing there. I'm not familiar with Ulrich in this case as far as like how much he communicates, but it's from a defensive standpoint. But those three other guys, and you throw in Davion Mitchell, those are guys that are getting into it and they're going to start
Oh
talking.
yeah.
Right? So you can see there's a pattern forming here, even though they're all playing different types of positions.
It's funny. I've seen the thought process that it's a pattern because they fit around Scotty. I don't know if they do or not. I think it's more of a pattern of we got a bunch of dogs. Maybe
Yeah.
it's Pat Bev's comments that struck a nerve or something, but we got a bunch of dogs. We got a
Mhm.
bunch of dudes that are hungry,
Mhm.
that are here to work,
Mhm.
high character guys,
Mhm.
and guys that are willing and for the most part, guys who have minus Ulrich, who have some semblance of feel to the game.
Mhm.
I just Ulrich is a little he's a little raw to say
Bunch, yeah, exactly.
that. But yeah. All right, so Mogbo. Mogbo is interesting because he's kind of a tweener. He has a similar body. He's like take this from JD. He has the Jarris Walker starter pack. He likes talking about starter packs. So he has the Jarris Walker starter pack in terms of the body. He's like basically he's actually taller than Jarris Walker, funny enough, because Jarris Walker is only 6'5". He's 6'6", right?
So
But
did he pick up Clarence Witherspoon? This is who we picked up.
yeah. But essentially he's like 7 foot plus wingspan, 6'6". He's like a 4/5. He's a small ball 5. He's like there's a Spurs guy that I want to say Dwayne Dedman or something like that,
Yeah,
but it's
Dwayne
I
Dedman, yeah.
I'm not sure if it's 100% him.
But Dedman's
There's
about 6'9".
no there was it him? There was a guy that was a Spurs that was like 6'6", and he played center like a couple. This is in the past like 15 years.
Boris Diaw?
No, it wasn't Boris. It was a more of a defensive guy. He ended up playing on the Heat as well for a little small stint.
But that's Dedman. But Dedman's a
It
taller.
might was it Dedman?
Yeah, Dedman played for both, yeah.
It
But
might be
Dedman's
someone
not
else.
6'6", though.
No. But it was someone that was undersized. It might have been Dedman. But yeah,
Yeah, he's about 6'9", 6'10", yeah.
yeah. I think it was closer to the 6'9" type thing. So yeah, I mean, in terms of let's focus on defense first, and then we'll go to the offensive side. So defense, he is very tenacious. I saw this one sequence where he started off they were doing a full court press. He started off guarding the inbounds and ended up cleaning up the mess on the very end. It was really impressive. So he stopped the inbounder, ran all the way back and swatted that, got that garbage out of there. And that was pretty impressive. So, he's definitely switchable. That's for sure. He's definitely tenacious. We all also know that Scotty is his boy. It was interesting. Just a little bit about him. He went to 5 different schools, in high school. Through 5 years.
Wow.
And part of it was he was trying to find a place that really worked for him and that, he could, whether it be fit or whatever, it just, he was trying to find like a bit of a home, and he finally did find a home, but it took him a little bit of time. He of course went to UCF eventually. And I think of course he also I think he played. Did he play at Missouri State last year in the NCAA? I think so. So he to show you the growth in his game, he shot 43% last year from the free throw. He's shooting
Mhm.
70% this year. That's a big jump. He doubled his points. He doubled his rebounding. He's put a lot of work in the game. The other thing that he did is he improved his awareness on the court. So this year he averaged about 3.7 assists. His range currently is at the rim.
Mm,
So he's a bit of a Draymond minus the backpack shooting.
right.
And that's not a bad thing.
No, it's not a bad thing. It just kind of killed me a little bit how you described it. That's
you
all.
know it's not a bad thing for for people, but I think that it's an interesting base, and
Mm,
I think he's more of a project player, but I think he's a call it a functional project player.
right.
Your thoughts?
Um, it's gonna be interesting with him because it's not that I don't like the pick. It's that I don't like
Yeah.
where the pick was picked. Is it like I just if he was picked at 44, I'd be like, okay, cool. I just felt like 31 was a bit of a reach. I'm not a big fan of tweeners, so I have that prejudice against probably the players are a bit considered to be a bit tweeners.
Yeah.
So I am mulling through my head like, okay, I can see in some defensive matchups late in games you want to put him out there against somebody that's a big wing, and you're just going out there, just going after them. Fine, me a guy kind of generates energy, kind of how Boucher plays that role for us now. Great,
Yeah,
but
like a smaller Boucher in a
yeah,
sense.
smaller Boucher, just like
But
energize the bunny and out he goes. He
well,
does his
actually, that's a good point because one of the things that they notice is that he's better in space. Funny enough, he's not good like just put him by the hoop and he can figure his way
right.
out.
No, yeah, I suspect he'll be great in transition, things of that nature. He's probably get out and start, for steals, blocks. He's, just create chaos and off you go. I don't
Yeah, I
mind that.
mean, he took 6 catch and shoot jumpers this entire year.
That's what I'm saying. But I think he's a guy as over time he will be
Yeah,
exposed. So I really wonder where does he start the year? Because I can't. I mean, is he
in the
starting off?
gulag, probably is my
Well, he's
guess.
not in the G League.
That's what I'm
He's
saying. The gulag.
well, jeez. I mean, he's got yeah, because I think you got to look at. To be fair, you got to to get him going. For him, the first thing I think they have to establish offensively is for him just to be able to knock down 15 to 17 foot jump shot. If nothing
Yeah,
else, don't even start with threes. Just get him to hit like a jump shot from there, right? Like it's like okay, just hit 15 to 17 foot jump shots. That's all we want you to do. That's it. And then just work on finishing around the hoop. Those two things, nothing more. And just play your hellacious defense that you usually play and rebound and do all that type of stuff. But that's
yeah.
why I would really have him doing it once he's in the G League because he's not ready to come up to play with the big squad at this
Not
point.
not quite. Yeah, he's a
And
hard worker. I will
he's a
say
hard
that.
worker, and I have no problem with that. Like I said before, my issue is more picking him at 31. I still scratch
Yes.
my head about that, and I'm not sure if this was we give one here for Masai to kind of keep him quiet and let him have one for himself, or is this like the Scotty angle where it's like okay to get Scotty comfortable, his guys on the board, we'll make sure we don't want to lose him, so let's just pick him here at 31, just be done with it. So
So
I don't
so
know
I'll
where
I'll
the
just
angle is at.
say because we found out that we had to trade before. We found out that we had 45
Like 45, yeah, I said 44, yeah,
before we
right,
even selected. So to your
right.
point, you know,
Yeah. Yeah. See, that's what I wonder. Yeah. I do wonder maybe it's more the first and the second. I mean, maybe, because it would seem to me now we hear the story, we'll get to him in a second, and you could bring up how that came about the deal in place with Sheed. The deal might have been to make sure you got the pick so you could pick them. Right. So that might be now we're seeing those little breadcrumbs that are coming out now. Like, okay, this is the rationale behind why they wanted to get that draft pick because they worked out
right.
something with Sheed. So fair enough. Um, but overall, I think he'll be a useful player. You always talk about the pipeline. Definitely gonna help in that sense. He'll be also another intriguing player to watch next week when Summer League comes. I said before, I've never been to a Raptor Summer League this excited to a Raptor Summer League. I have to go back probably to when the T-Mac was going to play Summer League. That's to be this excited about Summer League for the
True.
Raptors. Like that's how long it's been. Where it's like I think the first year DeRozan was pretty excited to see what he looked like, but like this year with all the different elements involved, a second year at Grady, Yeah, this is gonna be a fun summer league to watch, man. There's gonna be a lot for us to kind of chew over, man. So I mean, good for him. It's a guy who keeps Scotty kind of like level headed. Maybe pushes Scotty even in some ways that we didn't expect.
Well,
Um,
it gives him a bit of comfort as well, having his one of
one
his
of his
boys
guys
there
there,
and stuff.
right? Yeah. So like, I mean, I've come around to it a
Hmm.
little bit. At first I was like, really, but then, the draft pick there makes sense now when you hear the story with Sheed. I'm like, okay, fine, and we know what's gonna happen later on. So be
Yeah,
it.
yeah, yeah. He's definitely someone that we talked about,
Yes.
but it again, it was like, well, you can get him later on. That was
Yeah.
kind of the thought. I don't think any of us were really high on Filipowski, so we'll just skip past
Yeah, we were very
that.
happy that we didn't see that. I think there's a couple of guys I was very nervous about seeing on the Raptors. That was one.
Yeah,
Yeezy was another one I was very scared of at the
yeah.
where he had been picked. So yeah,
Yeah, because the challenge that I've seen is again and again and again, people keep trying to compare every African dude. I'm not even going to
lazy.
get into it today,
Yeah,
but
it's quite
it is
lazy.
lazy. But it's just one of those things where it's like, okay, well, like Basari likes picking African guys, and like, oh, well, he did well with like all these other African guys. So like, this African guy will work hard just like this. It's just like they're different guys.
Well,
They're
to be
starting with a
fair to
different.
these fellas, man, he did pick
He
Mogbo,
that is true,
and he picked
and
Ulrich,
Ulrich,
right?
but yeah, to make up for
So,
that's true. But
and
I mean,
Filipowski did go to Utah. So I'm just saying,
this is true. This is true. So maybe they're not. Maybe
we
I'm
should
the
kill these dudes.
I'm yeah. I'm coming down too hard on people. But that is what I'm saying. It's just a weird thing. That's all I'm saying. So
Yeah.
uh,
Hey, folks, we don't make it, man. This is just how it worked out, man.
this is how it worked out. This is how it worked out. But yeah, uh.
The kid for Creighton going to Boston. Come on, man.
Yes. So obviously we got Jamal Shead. I know that he had an extra year or whatever of eligibility or whatever because of the COVID-19 stuff, if I'm not mistaken.
Hmm.
So he kind of got he had an interesting year. He's 21, 6 foot guard. I don't know his wingspan, but I do know that he's extremely disruptive. He's kind of a potential two-way guy. He had over 2.2 steals a game. And he can be a little bit off ball. He's a smaller guard, but we need some guards in the pipeline. Now, I will get to Davion Mitchell at the very end, but he
Yeah.
was actually acquired through our through the trade that sent Jalen McDaniels out. Now that trade to me,
Well,
we haven't fully gotten into it, but that's the interesting thing of the
yeah.
whole
Let's.
thing.
Well, before we leave off a sheet, I mean, I think I just want to give the guy
Mhm.
his due in
Yeah,
this
of
case
course.
here because his resume in this case is pretty impressive. Big 12
Yes.
Player of the Year. He also was in this case here, averaging 13, 6.3 assists, 3.7 rebounds. He also was named consensus first team All American. Also, too, I said Big 12 Player of the Year and Naismith Defensive Player of the Year. Like he got some credentials coming into this. I
He
remember
does.
watching him in college. He gets into people, right? And once again, we're seeing this coming throughout the whole night from last night to tonight. We are gonna get guys who get into your faces, right? And I think that I don't know where he fits in all this. Once again, another guy I can't wait to watch next week. Like it's like, oh my gosh, who is this team? Who is this franchise? We have people to watch, Kenyon. We have people to
We
watch.
do. We really
Oh my
do.
gosh, I mean, we have a list. I'm losing track of all the guys we gotta watch. Anyhow, so I want to give him his due on that front. I'm not sure. I think you might want to mention. You know this better than me about the contractual situation, which is a fascinating little story.
So the interesting thing is that he basically said no to a whole, I think like 12 teams,
Yes.
and he agreed to the Raptors because we were giving him a guaranteed contract. Now that's not, I mentioned that not because it's a bad thing, but because it's very interesting because it shows you how agents have a lot of agency in the second round over where their clients go, and there's a lot of maneuvering, let's say, that
Mhm.
goes on in these type of situations. So, obviously really happy for him to kind of, especially his agent, great job, great job, great job. And, well deserved. Before we continue, yeah,
Well, I should say I think he's a streaky 3-point shooter.
yes.
I can't remember his numbers off the top of my head, but just going back to watching him in
He's
college.
like 31% from three. It's not
He
great.
get hot a little bit, but he's not great. But
Yeah, it's more
he's
the
a guy.
defense,
Yeah, his
and
defense
he's a decent rebounder.
rebounder. He can kind of get in the lane a little bit or the right match because he's got a big frame. So if
Yeah.
you're putting smaller guards against him, if he's got a nice little post up type of thing or get in the lane, he can make people pay. So like there's ways he can create havoc in his own way. But yeah,
Based
please.
on who's on the roster, and we'll get to Davion eventually, I think that he's more in your G League pipeline for at least a year or two. But maybe he gets a shot on. He has a better shot than some other guys who have been in the G League of coming up. Because
You don't think he might
again,
be you don't think he might be the back end of the bench at the start of the season?
maybe, but Davion is obviously going to get the nod there.
No, I agree with that, but I think he might be sitting there as like person 13, 14, or 15.
Maybe, but those people don't play on this team.
Fair enough.
Like
But
like Boucher is probably the 8th guy on this team, or the 9th guy. He didn't play.
I think that's what Boucher's a whole other story.
It is a whole other discussion, but yeah. So yeah, but by the way, people, Boucher's still here. I don't have a problem with it. I actually like Boucher, but the problem is we have a coach that don't play him. So yeah, I think he as in Jamal Shead, I think overall the story is really nice. I think it's good. But at the end of the day, I think it's I don't see him. I don't know if I see him carving out a role on the main roster this year, unless something, maybe an injury case. Because we also have Javon Freeman Liberty that we have to sort that out. I don't know if he's going to make it past Summer League. Probably not. But there's a possibility that he does. I'm not, hoping one way or another. I just hope for the best for him. But I mean, they've had a look at him at this point, so it's kind of interesting that they're bringing in another guard who's on a guaranteed contract. Who the guaranteed contract is more guaranteed than the other guy. So, kind of spelling out the situation there.
It makes for fascinating times in Raptor land.
Right, and currently I went down the roster. We have, if you are including Javon Freeman Liberty, we have one roster spot left. That roster spot probably goes to the Mr. Brown, so that they can make a trade with Mr. Brown. So Raptors fans, buckle up, hold on. So we go. I think we've talked about everything. I think we even started with Ulriche, so we don't have to go back over Ulriche. How we got here. We made a deal. Jalen McDaniels out. Obviously, coming in was a lot of stuff that was very interesting. So there's Sasha from the Sacramento Kings. I'm not going to try to pronounce his last name today, but what I will say, he's a solid player, but I don't think he's going to play here because last time I heard, he was trying to work his way back to Europe. Now, does that...
The colo on you, huh?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, true. So is he trying to angle still? I don't know. Is it more about playing time? Could be. If he plays, I mean, there's some upside there, but at the same time, he's 28.
At this point, right? He's not 4-5. He's more like a 3-4, isn't he?
Yeah, he's a 3-4. So I think there's like room for him on the roster. I don't know how much.
Right.
Because I don't know if they have him in the starting lineup. That would be that would cause some umbrage with a lot of folks. That would be interesting.
He does
but
fit from a standpoint, from that position, from a positional
he does.
He does fit. Yeah, it's true. It's true. Yeah. It's true.
So
yeah. You're the first person who mentioned that. That is true.
So that is something that, don't, if he is here, don't be shocked, because that's one of the things that he's angling for. Is he's angling for time. At the same, with that token thrown out, I think that regardless of whether he's here or not, the trade's still great. The reason why the trade's so great, not just did we get the 45th overall pick, which I'm kind of like, oh, okay, whatever on. I was neither here nor there. I wanted that Portland pick, and I did a mock draft, and I got that Portland pick. Getting that Portland pick for 2025 means we have more picks, and it's Portland. They're not going to be good.
Unless Shaden Sharp just blows up this coming year.
Or they still have Ayton.
Don't know.
They still have Ayton.
You folks think this man's be cruel to Raptors, man. You ain't seen that yet, how he's talking about Ayton.
I'm cruel to everyone. That's really the thing.
He'll hold back on Ayton.
Nope. No, you got to show up if it snows, man. You can afford snow tires or chains if you need to. It's Portland. Um, so yeah, I mean, here's the thing, right? Like, I don't think Portland's going to be good. That is going to be, I don't think it's going to be the worst pick of the second or the best pick, looking at that way. But I don't see it getting above 40 as a
Yeah.
pick next year.
Well, I'll say this, man. I mean, I know we're kind of running out here. I'll say this,
Mm.
man. I'll give Masai and the front office their due. This was a master stroke from a trade standpoint. Because I
Yeah,
remember
you just kept finding out more and more.
right. I'm sitting there going, waiting around for you and coach. It's like, there's got to be more to this deal. Please tell me, like, we got to be sending something else out besides McDaniels. I couldn't believe what we got back on this deal.
Yeah. So
Like,
what it is they saved $12 million.
I grant you, but I mean, just from the Raptors standpoint, you got to bid everything. You got a player
Yes.
that can play. You got yourself another guy, a big that might help you a little bit, even if he doesn't, so be it. And you got that Portland draft pick and the 44th.
Yeah. The Portland the Portland draft pick is nice. Now you also got Davion Mitchell. So Davion Mitchell off night. He is in the last year of his rookie scale deal. They will have 1 year to evaluate him. With that being said, I think that this closes the book on what off night book night. This closes the book on whether or not they're going to get a guard in free agency. I think you've gotten like what 3-4 guards or whatever recently.
Yeah,
including him,
right? Yeah, if you take two guard Walter, you get now Shead and Mitchell technically on the point guard side,
right? And Mitchell's kind of like a combo guard, but a really small combo guard too.
Yeah, so you're straight. Like
you're good, and then you still have Ochai, you still have Grady. Grady can kind of be the 2-3.
You still might send your boy back, Gary.
Maybe depending on Brown.
Yeah.
Depending on Brown. So point is you don't have a lot. I don't think we're getting a point guard in free agency if we go that route. So then you have the question of, well, what else is next, right? So I think the thing with Davion Mitchell, he has struggled a little bit in Portland and kind of fallen out of their rotation. I think he was outplayed by Keon Ellis, if I'm not mistaken, this year. Yeah, but at the same time, you know what? I think that this is not a bad call it a redraft with a year to kind of see what you have. He plays really tenacious defense. If it works, it works. If it doesn't, it's a low risk move.
Yeah. No, it's a perfect move. I mean, I give him all respect for that. You end up getting Sheed out of it. You got the second round pick for next year from Portland on this as well too, which as you said before, is going to be a very quality pick. Like probably. And Mitchell, if he works out, fine. If he doesn't, that's fine too. Like it's okay. Suppose he's got some connections with Scotty, I heard. So even from an emotional standpoint, you got another guy, it's someone to kind of one of a guy he can hang with. So it works out in a lot of different ways, man. I like it.
And he's like Ochai is an NCAA champion.
Yeah. So I guess where do you grade this draft?
I bump it up mainly because of that trade. I'll be honest. That bumps it up a lot. I would have normally given it a B minus.
Mm-hmm.
I give it a B plus. So the whole draft bumps up like almost a full letter grade, almost to an A minus because of that. Yeah. I think the Mogbo pick, to me, it's all right. It's not the player, it's where you took him.
Yeah.
Because I just think that there was better options available, and you could have probably gotten him at 45. I don't think it was guaranteed that you get him at 45, but I think that there was a chance. And the Ulrich pick, I like it as a long-term fit. Masai gets this project, we get a project with high upside. Maybe do you think he factors into the rotation, even as a two-way?
I think they'll give him a shot.
Right.
I think they will.
And I'll just go one step further. There's an undrafted guy that we didn't talk about. Maybe we'll talk about him the next time, but we got to get out of here soon.
Two-way guy, right? Yeah.
Yeah. So that's the other two-way guy. We'll see if DJ Carton stays or not, because he would be your third guy, and if they waive him, then you have a third two-way spot open. Sorry. The thing about why I think that Jamal is going to be in the pipeline is because they really lacked a point guard last year on that 905. You had Dylan Harper. All respect to him, he's not a point guard. He knows he's not a point guard.
Not Dylan
Exactly.
Harper. We're talking about
Sorry,
yeah,
Ron Harper Jr.
yeah, Ron Harper Jr. Wrong brother.
Yes, wrong brother. Dylan, come on down. But next year. But we had Ron Harper with like his cracked ribs trying to run point when he's not a point guard.
I mean, think
And
about this guy's the other point guard.
well, but he got injured
I know what I'm saying. That's
very
what, yeah.
quickly and often.
The plan
True.
started wrong in the first place. What I'm saying.
Yes. So I mean, right now you need someone, and you're basically paying him to be that guy. That I think that's a good way to lift up your program, because you really need, if you're gonna bring in a big like Ulrich, you can't say you're go create yourself. That's dangerous. That's very dangerous. And by having someone on a guarantee, you're giving that huge incentive to do that role.
Yeah, for sure. No, I am. There's so many. I can't believe in 24 hours now how much to look forward to. I just say this with my final thoughts is that I said before, keep going at the summer league. We have Shead, Ulrich, Grady, of course the rookie Walter, Mogbo, I believe is how you pronounce his name.
Yeah.
At least those 5 guys to watch. And you say Ulriche is going to be on the summer league team, and fair enough. You can check him out too if you want to. So we got 6 guys that kind of see what's going on in the summer league team this year. I can't wait.
Now, I do want to give a shout out to Zach Edey. Zach Edey actually went in the top 10. Huge congratulations to him. I know I've call it dogged him or given him a hard time on this podcast. However, I will say, Memphis is one of the places that he works. I did see, I did give him, I did defend him actually even. I said, because he was getting dogged by, but in the public square kind of a thing. And I was like, they made it, because they were saying they can't make it work with Jaw and stuff. I said they made it work pretty well with Steven Adams.
Yeah. I think there's some differences, but I'm willing
There
to
are.
see how it plays out. I'm
There are.
curious. Yeah.
But I'm just saying, like, they were looking for a big, just someone who was cheaper.
No doubt. I think it makes perfect sense for them. And I think now he's just got, we see what his training, his nutrition, all that type of stuff.
Right.
How it works out. At least with him, we don't have to worry for long because I suspect he'll be playing a lot in July.
Question. Does he play Summer League?
I don't think he does.
That's what I'm saying.
No,
because
yep.
The Olympics.
You got Summer League in Paris, man.
Yep. Which is probably the best summer league for him, to be honest, in terms of training camp, because you're around, pros.
Yep.
Not around people that are all hungry and try to muscle you out.
Yeah, you bust your chops or do whatever it is to get there. So no, I'm looking forward to it. All I say is props out to the James family. Do your thing. Don't let the haters do anything to you. Go ahead, Bronny.
That's right. Bronny James went, back home. I guess he went down the street to,
Good luck to your career, young man.
Yes, I'll give the shout out to Dalton just because, Dalton got picked by Dalton from the future or whatever. In other words, JJ Redick. So Dalton. He fell. He was sweating for a while. He kept checking his phone and stuff. Obviously, you see him text the agent.
I hate to see that with the green room for the fellas, man. It's rough. When they showed Furphy later on the night, I'm like, geez, at this point, doesn't even show the kids, man. I feel for when they got.
I don't even think Furphy showed back up today.
Would you?
No, nor did Filipowski. Which is there's some interesting things coming up from there. I'll let people look that up themselves. Sorry, I know I'm rushing through this, but there's a debate on people. So, Beyond, is there anything else that do you feel like I rushed through anything that you want to more?
No, we chewed this up pretty well for about an hour. I think there's so much stuff. There's gonna be so many storylines coming out of this.
Yeah.
I mean, it's been quiet on the Raptors front for a bit, but boy, did they kind of really show up and show out today for an organization that I've been critical of not being aggressive enough to make moves. I give them their due today.
Yeah, this wasn't a perfect draft for me, but it was pretty good. Now, I'm a hard person to please. A B+ is a good grade.
Yeah, I just would say they made great headway today, and. Yes. They got a lot of the things you had to check off the little checklist for the shopping, the grocery list. They got a lot of them checked off.
So what's left is Bruce Brown needs to be sorted out one way or another.
Yeah, and Boucher, I think you really.
And Boucher.
Yeah. Trent Jr., that will sort itself out one way or the
Yep.
other in about 3 days.
Yes, I think Bruce Brown and Trent are somewhat tied just from a financial standpoint, but also I think we know which way, just based on all who they drafted, stuff like that. I think we know how things are going. So yeah,
Who knows?
uh,
Maybe it might be a sign and trade in this case here with a particular fellow that played for the Bulls last year.
it might be, it might be. But we'll get into that and everything else on another day.
Yep.
People like, comment, subscribe. Helps the algorithm. We are growing as a channel. I'm very happy to see all the growth and stuff like that. And yeah, that's about it. That's a pod, people. Take care, and be safe. Peace.